Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're essentially going to completely rebuild your brain's operating system. Seriously, if you've ever felt like studying just takes way too long or you can't seem to hold on to new information no matter how hard you try, well, you're absolutely in the right place. We're going to decode the actual mechanics of how to learn faster, remember more, and truly master any skill you set your mind to. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's dive right into this universal frustration. You know the feeling, right? You spend hours highlighting textbooks, rereading your notes, maybe binge watching endless tutorials, only to realize a few days later that, oof, the information is completely evaporated. Now you might think, oh, I just have a bad memory, but actually, scratch that. It isn't a memory problem at all. It's a system problem. The core issue here is what we call the passive trap. It's basically a leaky bucket scenario. When you're just simply reading or watching, you are pouring information into a bucket that literally has a hole in the bottom. Real learning doesn't happen when you passively consume. It happens when you act as a producer, when you actively force that information out, whether that's by explaining it to someone else or testing yourself. That is what actually sparks those mental light bulbs. And that brings us to a huge trap experts call the illusion of competence. When you read a chapter twice, your brain recognizes the words and whispers, hey, yeah, I know this. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. Simply recognizing text just because it feels familiar is a passive, really weak state. True mastery requires retrieval. That's the active, strong ability to physically close the book and explain the whole concept entirely from scratch. So to get you to that point of absolute retrieval, here is our game plan. We're going to walk through a 5-phase mastery blueprint. Phase 1 is priming your brain. Phase 2 is deep understanding. Phase 3 is managing mental load. Phase 4 is permanent memory. And Phase 5 is strategic efficiency. All right, let's kick things off with Phase 1, priming your brain, or what I like to call intellectual reconnaissance. Most learners try to hack through a new subject like they're in a dense forest with a dull machete, just starting on page 1 and hoping for the best. But you've got to map the territory first. Before you commit a single fact to memory, scan the bold headings, ask questions, and create mental hooks. You're basically turning your brain into a heat-seeking missile that actually wants to capture the incoming data, rather than just letting it wash over you. Before you read a single word in depth, spend just 5 or 10 minutes doing this quick 3-step checklist. First, scan the visual skeleton. Flip through the pages, look at the charts, maybe even read the chapter summary so you know exactly where the story ends. Second, hook the topic to something you already know. And third, target a specific finish line. Don't just say, I'm going to study economics. Say, I want to explain the law of supply and demand to my friend. Doing this drastically reduces your cognitive load right out of the gate. Moving right along to Phase 2, deep understanding. This is your ultimate BS detector. Okay, once you've primed your brain, you actually have to digest the information. And here's the golden rule. If you can't explain a concept simply, you don't actually understand it. Enter the Feynman Technique. Named after the brilliant Nobel Prize-winning physicist Richard Feynman, this is literally your ultimate BS detector. It forces you to stop hiding behind complex, fancy vocabulary. You take heavy jargon, like quantum mechanics, and explain it using everyday analogies, kind of like comparing electricity to water flowing in pipes. Here is exactly how you execute it. Step 1, write your concept at the top of a blank sheet of paper. Step 2, explain it in writing as if you were teaching a 12-year-old child, meaning absolutely zero jargon. Step 3, identify where you get stuck. Those sticking points, those are your knowledge gaps. And finally, Step 4, go back to your source material to refine your understanding. By treating those gaps like GPS coordinates for your studying, you build a mental model that is going to stay with you forever. And this brings us to a really hard truth. Knowing the name of something is absolutely not the same as knowing the thing itself. Knowing the vocabulary, like saying, oh, that's the law of inertia, is completely useless surface knowledge. Deep knowledge is being able to say objects just keep doing what they're doing unless something else pushes them. That cognitive strain of simplifying things, that is literally the sound of your brain building brand new synapses. All right, Phase 3, managing mental load. We're talking chunking and interleaving. So now that we have a technique for deep understanding, we need to organize all this incoming info so our working memory doesn't just redline and crash. Your working memory can realistically only hold about 4 to 7 bits of information at a time. Enter chunking. Think about how you memorize a phone number, right? A string of 10 random digits is almost impossible to remember. But by grouping those 10 digits into 3 meaningful chunks, you instantly expand your brain's carrying capacity. When you study, group your facts by patterns or categories to massively increase your mental storage limit.
Next up, you need to mix it up. Most people use what's called blocked practice, like studying topic A for 2 hours and then moving to topic B. Sure, it feels easy, but it creates this robot learning where your brain just operates on autopilot. Interleaving, on the other hand, means mixing related topics together in a single session. Yeah, it feels messy and it's definitely harder, but it builds athlete learning. It trains your brain not just on how to use a skill, but when to use it when you're faced with real-world chaos.
Which brings us to phase 4, permanent memory. It's time to lock in the knowledge.
We've understood the material, we've organized it efficiently, but now we have to confront the biggest enemy of learning, the natural decay of human memory. 70%. Honestly, that number is absolutely terrifying. Research on the forgetting curve shows that within just 24 hours, your brain will dump up to 70% of what you literally just learned unless you actively intervene. If you don't challenge your brain's remember, it just takes that data and throws it straight in the trash. To stop this memory decay, we use active recall. Like I mentioned earlier, rereading your notes is a massive trap. That is just input. True retention only happens with output. You have to do the heavy mental lifting. Close the book and force your brain to retrieve the information from scratch. Use blank sheets of paper, take practice tests, or use flashcard apps, but make sure you are saying the answer out loud before you check if you got it right. But you can't just do it once. You need to pair active recall with spaced repetition. To permanently hack that forgetting curve, you don't just review a fact every day for a week. No, you review it right at the exact moment you're on the verge of losing it. First at 24 hours, then 3 days, then 1 week, and then 1 month. This systematic spacing moves information straight from your fragile, short-term memory into your indestructible, long-term hard drive. I really want to emphasize a concept here called desirable difficulty. Most people, when they struggle to remember something, they just quit. They think, oh, I guess I'm just not smart enough. But the exact moment you are struggling to reach for an answer, that is the exact moment your brain is physically growing new connections. If your learning feels too easy, well, it isn't working. You've got to embrace that struggle because it's the ultimate signal of real mastery. Finally, phase 5, strategic efficiency. It's all about the Pareto principle. We have reached the 5th and final gear, where we shift our focus from deep retention over to high-velocity execution. The smartest learners ruthlessly deconstruct a scale to find the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. They filter for the 20% of inputs that are going to give them 80% of the actual performance. Instead of trying to memorize 10,000 words in Spanish, master the 1,000 high-frequency words that make up everyday conversation. Instead of learning every single guitar scale, master the 4 basic chords that let you play thousands of songs. Ruthlessly ignore the low-impact fluff. Your ultimate goal here is to find the minimum effective dose. In medicine, this is the smallest amount of a drug needed to get the desired outcome. In learning, it's the point where you have just enough core knowledge to begin. You have to overcome that perfectionist desire to learn everything in a perfect sequence. Stop over-preparing, accept being selectively ignorant of the weird edge cases, and start applying those core concepts immediately. Let's take a second to reflect on this incredibly powerful quote. The world belongs to those who can learn, unlearn, and relearn at speed. Think about that. Learning isn't some magical, innate gift that only a lucky few are born with. It is a highly mechanical, biological process, and you now have the exact blueprint to control and optimize it. So, I'm going to leave you with this question. What is that one complex topic or skill you've been putting off? And more importantly, are you ready to deploy this blueprint and finally conquer it today? Take that subject, sit down right now, and spend just 5 minutes doing your Phase 1 pre-game scan. See what happens. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy learning.